and I don't know what I'm chasing, and I don't know what I'm trying to prove. Maybe I'm trying to prove it to myself. Maybe I'm trying to prove it to the industry. I know.
There's got to be something.
I mean, I did Fully Loaded.
Is it dad shit? Is it family?
No. I mean, my dad was a guy who was always said he was proud of me.
Well, that's a fun thing, watching people crest into stardom, bust through, to see how they handle it. Bert Kreischer's a cautionary tale.
But if you think you had to achieve something to get people to fucking hang out with you, then it's like being the fucking rich kid with an N64 who nobody actually fucking likes.
Wait, is that me?
No.
This might be the psychology of all of it.
Yeah.
Every week, it seems like we get a new piece to the Bert Kreischer puzzle, and it's been interesting to watch how different guests go about telling Bert what they really think. This week, Stavros made an appearance on Two Bears, One Cave, and he managed to get several sentences out before Bert interrupted him, which has to be some sort of record. But like always with these modern-day comedian philosophers, the podcast ended up turning into a therapy session. I should say, though, that it wasn't entirely Bert's fault. Stavros leaned into it and had quite a bit to say about Bert's career and the way that he thinks, and ended up getting Bert to admit how much the money and fame has ruined him. But as usual, it all started with a humble brag from Bert about how hard he works compared to everybody else.
I'm always fascinated. I mean this as a compliment, because your generation has a work ethic that's different than our generation. Like, I can't stop working. And I remember you, DeStefano, your whole group of guys were all like, yo, work enough so that you can enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, because I think ultimately working, like this idea that you have to constantly be doing more and more is so fucked up and poisonous, I think. Yeah. And that is the problem with America to me is capitalism's good up until the point where you just have to keep going. And it's like, why don't you just find the place where it's nice and stop? Why do shareholders always want more? Why can't you just be a profitable business and get to see your family and get to do all these things? And, I think that is something where, I mean, most of the people my age can't, are working just to survive. So it's almost like this thing of the best thing you could do is, if you're successful, is actually just get to live what a middle-class person got to live one generation ago. The middle class doesn't exist anymore. So all I want is to, have a good time, make some stuff that's fun, and then figure out being happy. Because the other thing is, being successful doesn't make you happy. Yeah. Doesn't necessarily make you happy. You just gotta.
I'll tell you what, being unsuccessful makes you sad.
There's something really special about three fat comedians sitting around doing a podcast talking about how hard they work. And you could tell that Bert was sitting there just waiting for an opportunity to mention how successful he is and how much he enjoys being famous. He's almost like the Kim Kardashian of comedy because he's not funny and he's become famous for being famous. People know him as the guy who sells out arenas, due in most part because of the fact that he brings it up at every opportunity. But now that Bert's entire persona is being a rich and famous comedian, it's become a running joke that he struggles with the fame and he's lost control of reality. On last week's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with Tony Hinchcliffe, Tony was bragging to Rogan about how much he's blown up after the Tom Brady roast and how much he's enjoying all of the attention, which Joe used as an opportunity to throw a couple of strays at Bert.
Drake hit me up saying Casey Rocket equals GOAT emoji. Actual Drake. We started dialogue. I go, who is this? It's unreal.
Right, you don't feel it's real, right?
It's crazy.
Well, that's a fun thing, watching people crest into stardom, bust through, to see how they handle it. Bert Kreischer's a cautionary tale.
It's wild, man.
It's wild out there.
It's so fun.
Just kidding, Bert. Bert seems like he's having a great time.
Oh,
I remember when I called Bert, and Bert was on a motorcycle in Vietnam doing that stupid TV show. I go, dude, you need to be doing comedy. Quit that stupid show. You're too funny. You're too good. Come back. Yeah. Come hang out.
It's funny how Rogan will make fun of Bert for acting the fool, but then quickly remind everyone how he was the one who convinced Bert to become one of his never-been-funny comedians he pushes on his show. According to Bert, though, the fame didn't come quick enough for him, and he felt stuck for a long time. He even equated the comedy world to the mafia and explains how he desperately wanted to be a made man who everybody knew and respected.
I have a really sweet spot in this business, that, and Tom saw it firsthand. Is like, I was on Travel Channel and like not really. I mean, I was successful, but not like not across the board. Everyone was like, "Oh, Bert's here."
Yeah.
And then Tom was with me when everyone started popping and everyone started blowing up, and Tom started doing theaters, and Rogan's podcast is growing, and Ari's got 700,000 downloads on his Skeptic Tanks. He's doing his show, and I got fired from Travel Channel, and I remember being, it's not like you're a pariah, but there's a stink on you with other comics. They look past you.
But that
and trust me when I say, like, I think even at Brody's Roast, like, Tom goes and everyone's like, "Oh, Tom Segura's here," and I think I sat at the table with you and Push because I didn't know where to sit.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't like a made man, and like people that show up, like I remember Bradley Cooper showed up. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's Bradley Cooper," and I remember being like, "Whoa!" And so like I remember not being like, thinking, am I cool with the fact that I'm 44 and it's not going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And people know it's not going to happen. And people would look past you. They'd look past you at a party or look, and you're in the hallway of the store, and they're like, "Oh, shit, Chris D'Elia's here," and they'd walk right past you, and you were like, "Okay," and that's your life.
Of all the people Bert could have brought up there, he mentions Chris D'Elia. Seriously? Was there no one else? Yeah, Stavros wasn't going to let that one slide. It seems like Bert forgot about all the allegations and lawsuits that came out a few years ago accusing D'Elia of soliciting nude photos and grooming underage girls. And even though Chris was never charged with a crime and maintained his innocence the whole time, he is still struggling to shake off the accusations. Interesting choice from Bert there.
But see, that's a perfect example because I would say, what's Chris D'Elia's life like right now? You know what I mean? Like, the point is success if your personal life isn't right. If you might have a couple kooky habits, your personal life, it's like your success is not going to save you from that. And sorry, now we're just getting into like fucking therapy and like
but
philosophy.
I like this. I would be curious, and I hope we can keep this in the podcast, but I would be curious to hear D'Elia's perspective if he's happier now that his life is less chaotic, less crazy with his kid.
You know, that really wasn't what I was talking about. I wasn't really talking about him slowing down career-wise. That was the negatives with Chris D'Elia. I was kind of talking about some other stuff he was up to. But that is a great insight into your mind, Bert, where it's like it does matter to you in a way where, and maybe that's upbringing, right? Like maybe you feel the need to live up to something. I don't know if it's like family stuff. I don't know what the background is. I don't know the like what you wanted to achieve. And so like you were feeling like a piece of shit when you're like 45 or whatever, but you can look at that. I could look at that as a very successful career where you were at.
Yeah, Bert claiming that D'Elia's probably in a better place now that his career has quietened down is wild. And like Stavros said, it's so telling that Bert only sees D'Elia's downfall from a fame and fortune perspective instead of acknowledging that he's a fucking creep who allegedly preyed on underage girls. So it's safe to say that Bert has lost all perspective. I mean, his obsession with money and fame is so unhealthy at this point that it's hard to say what will end up killing him first. But in terms of how he views himself in the comedy world, it's almost a forensic exercise in venues and seating arrangements. He measures the success of a comedian based on which venues they're performing in instead of the quality of their actual work. Stavros explained during the podcast that his own career goals are to perform stand-up all over, but more importantly, to have one really good comedy special that he can be proud of and that will stand the test of time. Bert's approach is very different. He's all about the stats and comparing himself to the other comics around him.
I always thought of you as a successful comic. Both of you guys, like coming up, you're very aware of, now you could argue what you're doing now is fucking insane. Like it is. It's crazy. Like there's no other, you're both doing fucking arenas. Yeah. That's fucking crazy, dude. Sure. You got buses, you know what I mean? Like, and not one, there's buses for fucking the stage and shit like that. Yeah. I would argue that's fucked up and too much. You know what I mean? Like, I would argue that it's like you're going to drive yourself fucking crazy. And I've told you this too, where I'm like, you can't keep fucking working like this.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
insane.
Well, the next I get, it's always been a progression: clubs to theaters, theaters to arenas, clubs to rock venues to theaters, theaters to arenas. Arenas. There's like 2 tiers of arenas. There's hockey arenas where you can get everywhere. There's like 7,000-8,000. It's just a great night. And then you get Amalie, which is what 19 or in United Center, and then you go, okay, so 2 at the United Center, and then you're like, wait, what am I chasing?
Yeah, what's
like, this
the
is
fucking, exactly. That's my point exactly.
What am I chasing?
Where
It's
does
like, it doesn't go bigger than arenas. It does stadiums, but who wants to do 72,000 people? I mean, I kind of do.
Right
in Tampa,
there.
I'd like to shoot one special in the Tampa Stadium.
Yeah,
I've already talked to
let's
the
just say this.
Glazers. I've talked to everyone.
Right.
That would be a really great experience for the person in the upper deck. I'll tell you that much. Motherfucker pay $200 to fucking hear the machine in echo.
I heard it 4 times. I heard the machine 4 times.
That's what I'm talking about, dude. It's like at a certain point, what the fuck are we even doing here? You know?
So did you see what just happened there? Stavros brought up the fact that Tom and Bert are huge comics doing arenas, and he was trying to make the point that you need to stop and ask yourself why you're doing it and if you're happy performing at that scale. But Bert took it as an invitation to start breaking down the different kinds of venues and how many seats there are and what he's used to doing and how stadiums are crazy, but he would still do one. You know, 'cause Bert. And good on Stavros for calling him out, even though Bert didn't realize Stavros was making fun of his obsession with large venues. Stavros has this way of roasting his buddies by cracking jokes and then tying them into serious observations. Like just there when they were laughing about hearing the machine story echoing through a stadium, Stavros said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. At some point you got to ask yourself, what are we doing here, B? And just in case you weren't aware, Stavros actually tours with Bert. Bert's Fully Loaded tour is just a bunch of comics on the party bus doing massive venues. We're talking Bobby Lee, Dan Soder, Dave Attell, Greg Fitzsimmons, Joe DeRosa, Mark Norman, Matt McCusker, Tony Hinchcliffe, Whitney Cummings, and the list goes on.
I'm going to be doing some dates with him just for fun in a few weeks.
You going to do the Fully Loaded?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. It's a lot of comics,
I
right?
have no idea. I just know we're getting trashed on a bus, having fun, waking up, doing it again.
How long can he do that?
I don't know how long he can do it. I can do it for 4 days. I'm already like, I literally said to my people yesterday, I'm like, make sure I get the first flight out of wherever that ends up.
Are you guys sleeping on the bus, the whole deal?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Do you know how loud Bert must snore?
Oh, no, there's no way we can. No, there's chambers
Do you
and
have
stuff.
any idea?
There's no way that's happening. I think the whole tour, it's a bunch of snores. I feel like Big J Okerson.
Oh, Big J! For sure he snores.
There's going to be like...
If I snore, he snores.
Oh, yeah. There's going to be sleep apnea machines all over
Yeah,
that bus.
CPAP's plugged in everywhere.
Stavy probably snores.
Oh,
Oh,
for sure.
hell yeah.
Stavy snores.
Jesus.
Not a chance in hell that guy sleeps quiet.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that Tony Hinchcliffe is doing a few days on Bert's tour says a lot. That's how big it's become, and it's almost like the comedy tour version of Joe Rogan's podcast. Bert likes to brag that he's helped out a bunch of comics as they were coming up, including Mark Normand and Shane Gillis, and even though those guys would have made it anyway, and Bert exaggerates how many tickets he sells, you can't deny that Bert has created his own little comedy ecosystem. And so here's the punchline. Fame has ruined Bert because now he has to keep up the party boy act for everyone to want to hang out with him. He knows that if he doesn't put on these massive shows with a bunch of comics, none of them would hang out with him.
Life isn't just career and working. And that is a very American thing of like, let me accumulate more and more and more and let me, no amount of money is enough. And that's like a fucked up way of thinking, I think, that we all can't help it. That's how our society is structured. But I'm trying to like stay away from that.
I wish I was more grounded like that. And I don't know what I'm chasing, and I don't know what I'm trying to prove. Maybe I'm trying to prove it to myself. Maybe I'm trying to prove it to the industry. Like, well, I know.
There's got to be so.
I mean, I did Fully Loaded.
Dad, is it dad shit? Is it family shit?
No. I mean, my dad was a guy who was always said he was proud of me. And so I know when we did Forest Hills last year, someone said to me, really great show. And they were like, can you believe that you created this? And I said, no. And they said, why did you create this? And I said, I was drunk. And I said, because if I didn't create it, I wouldn't be invited. And they were like,
that's fucking crazy.
and I was like,
This might be the psychology of all of it.
Yeah.
If I didn't do it, no one was going to ask me to do it. I want to have a party. And then, so if I don't create it, no one's going to ask me to do it. No one's going to be like, we need to get Bert.
That's also not true.
Well, now it's not because I've done all these huge things. But if I didn't do those huge things, I would have never been invited. I feel like.
But that's also like, if that's why people are showing up, those aren't people you want to be around anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the people that would have been there if she was just going okay. Those are your actual. That's who you want to spend time with. You know. And it's one thing to like meet people because you're just doing more shows. But if you think you had to achieve something to get people to fucking hang out with you, then it's like being the fucking rich kid with an N64 who nobody actually fucking likes.
Wait,
like,
is that me?
No, but it's like that's not what you should be striving for. Is my point? Is that you're a great guy who's fucking awesome to be around, and people are gonna like being around you whether you have this shit or you don't. And then, in fact, by striving for approval from people who don't really give a fuck, you might be spreading yourself too thin and like just fucking over yourself like in a like very basic human way. And maybe even those people that would have been around, maybe you're not paying attention to them because you're striving for other oh hell yeah.
Campari Spritz.
Yeah.
My sister caught it. You drinking one too?
Wow, Cody. Don't worry.
Oh, you
I'm
made
good,
them?
thank you. I'm sober.
He's sober. Tom and I'll take one.
It does look incredible.
It's so good. Take a look at that.
That's
if you can
awesome.
look at the bubbles coming up, look at the great ice.
Yeah.
Ice is really important. I'm
And
a big
see,
fan
this
of ice.
is huge. I think you should have gotten just successful enough to be able to say, I would like a Campari Spritz, and someone brings it to you.
That's very successful.
You don't need any more than that, though. You know what I mean? Like,
See, right there at the end, when Bert's sister brought him and Tom some drinks, you can see how none of this is serious for Bert. He just wants to talk, usually about himself. Any attention is good attention for him, and any publicity is good publicity.
I was on coke one time and I pulled a piece of shit out of my ass.
Oh, man.
I knew I had to shit,
Too
but I couldn't
dry.
shit, and I was like trying to shit, and I couldn't shit. I was like,
You went for the C-section
I
approach.
went up there and I pulled it out. I was like, get the f*** out. We are going to bed. God damn it.
Yeah, that's fucking gross, dude. But like I was saying earlier, Bert's stuck in the party boy character that he created, and it's pretty crazy that he's finally openly admitted that he does everything so he can be accepted by the industry, as he calls it. Chasing fame has completely ruined him. He thinks that if he takes his foot off the gas and stops putting on these massive shows, then everyone that he thinks is his friend will slowly fade away. Bert knows he's not going to get invited to the party, so he throws the party himself. All he wants is to be included in the cool group and for everyone to cry at his funeral. And even when Stavros pointed out that it's not worth chasing the approval of all those comics if they're not your true friends, Bert just changed the subject and wants to talk about the bubbles in his drink. Buying your friends in your mid-50s is wild, and even if most of those comics are his true friends anyway and they value his friendship, he still believes deep down that they wouldn't invite him to the party if he didn't throw it himself. Stavros is 35 years old, he's 20 years younger than Bert, and he's giving him basic life advice. Meanwhile, Tom's just sitting there counting down the minutes until he can get out of Bert's studio and get back to Austin. The whole dynamic of these podcasts is just nuts. Anyway, that's it from me. If you ended up enjoying this video and want to see more of my uncensored content, head over to my Patreon where I can speak freely without any copyright restrictions and away from YouTube's censor regime. Check out the link in the description. Otherwise, if you're not a regular of this channel yet, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you ended up enjoying this video. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.
Because Bobby was like that too when I would open for Bobby, and I'm much more
Bobby
of a
who?
Bobby Kelly.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm much more of a like, let me get my head right for the show type of guy. We would go out. He'd be smoking cigars. We'd be talking to fans.
Real
We'd
extrovert
have
shit.
dinner.
Yeah.
He'd go to like a big dinner right before the show, and I'm like, bro, I need
And
to
usually
get.
after too.
Honestly, we may have been fatter than you were drunk. Do you know what I mean? Like, which is tough to pull off, bro. We might have been we were crushing food in a fucked up way.